Hello, Professor Compton. I am doing the presentation on botanical illustrations, and the premise of mine is going to be showing how the white flower is shown in artworks as a form of purity and love. So, starting out with a description of the flower, the one here in this illustration is from a collection of artworks given to the College of Charleston by a generous donator. The collection is dated to be from around the 17th century, and this specific work depicts a white flower from the ranunculus genus, I believe it's pronounced. The second word written, I'm not sure if it's mineralus or minerophus, but the word ranunculus roughly translates to buttercup in English, which also means small flower. And these ones are usually found in like fields and like gardens and stuff. Some people say that it's a weed, but I think it's too pretty to be just seen as a weed. A description of the flower in this illustration is as follows. It has multiple sets of small petals on top of each other. The flower center or pistil has a bumpy texture, is amber in color, and gradually becomes whiter as it reaches the petals. The stem and leaves are green, as most flower stems are, with the leaves connecting in groups of 5 and having jagged edges similar to a mint leaf. This illustration mainly comprises line work with minimal shading, especially on the stem and leaves. The leaf's midrib is formed with a single white stroke down its center, while the veins are defined with lines of dark green protruding from it. The same shade of green is used to outline the stem and leaves. The base of the stem has a slightly brown tint, which could be due to the stem, the flower being cut from the bush or its roots or wherever flower springs from. And the shading on the flower is created through a blending of grays. Now, as for my illustration, I didn't use gray for the shading. I used red, so it's more of like a pink gradation, which me personally, it looks the same because I am slightly colorblind, but to the normal eye, it is very obvious that it looks like a pink flower rather than a white flower. So in my copy of the artwork, I try to mimic the style as closely as possible to the original. The outline of the stem and leaves is much cleaner in the original compared to mine, which could have been fixed by going back with like a pen or a Sharpie or something just to clean up the lines. Looking at the flowers side by side, I can see that my copy of the work lacked the warm tones of the pistil and is replaced with a shade of red. This is also my fault. I wasn't looking as closely at the colors when I was recreating it. I was mostly looking at the form and like just the lines and stuff in general. My copy also lacks proper highlights on the petals of the flower. In the original, this could be easily fixed by going in with another layer of white gouache, which is what both of these artworks are created with. So in the original work, it has a lot cleaner, smoother look to it compared to mine. It's a lot more rough. This could have been fixed if I used a different brush or if I applied the gouache in a better, more strategic way. That's for the illustrations that I have presented. Now to talk about the main topic, which is how the white flower is seen as a form of purity in works of art. Before talking about how this flower is depicted in other artworks, I first want to state the meaning of this flower. I will be using the name white flower instead of the name of this specific flower due to its lack of representation in art. I couldn't find an artwork that talks about this specific flower because I was having a hard time finding this specific flower. There are tons of flowers that look very, very similar to it in a lot of Italian works. And I will be explaining how each white flower in each painting is a symbol of purity and love. First artwork being a still life by the artist Olosa Maddalena Cassina. Not sure if I said her name right at all. I apologize. And the title of this work is Flowers in a Grotesque Vase from the year 1635. The specific flower that I'm looking at as a reference for my argument isn't named, nor are the other flowers in this still life. If you were to put the flower from this painting next to the one from the illustrations, they look very, very similar. Some facts about the artist is that she was a nun who practiced art for nearly 50 years in northern Italy. She was one of 6 daughters, and her father was also an artist, which is where she learned her talent from. Within the still life, multiple flowers can be seen, mostly flowers of red, yellow, and white, with a few darker ones to the viewer's left. One could see this still life as a metaphor of love, starting with the red rose at the top, a flower related to the goddess of love, Venus. Purity is seen with the display of white flowers. Joy is seen with the yellow flowers. Lust is seen with the details in the vase, which has a boar-like face and flowers protruding from its mouth, devouring it orally. Darker flowers could symbolize hardships and consequences that come with the actions of love. There is also a moth on top of these darker flowers, which could also symbolize death, since moths are nocturnal creatures, and usually death is associated with night, and hence the moth being on the darker flowers. There is also a fruit next to the vase. On the viewer's left, it looks to be a peach, which has some erotic themes to it due to its shape, which is also probably why it's next to the vase as opposed to being higher up. And with that, one could look at the painting as a whole as sort of a scale for love, with the more sinful deed at the bottom being lust, and then followed by hardships and heartbreaks and possible death, the darker flowers, and then above that being joy with the yellow flowers, and then purity closer to the rose, and the rose depicts love as a whole. For my second artwork that I'll be talking about is Botticelli's Birth of Venus, painted from around 1485 to 1486. This is a painting depicting the goddess Venus. Flowers, especially roses, have always been associated with the goddess Venus, or Aphrodite in Greek. A story of flowers being related to Venus is seen in Ovid's Metamorphoses in Book 10, where the goddess falls in love with a mortal named Adonis, who was later killed by a boar while hunting. And due to this, Aphrodite was wishing to the god Persephone to immortalize him by turning into a red rose. Some other versions of the story and other translations say that she was chasing after Adonis while he was being killed by the boar, and while she was running, she was stepping on white roses and causing them to bruise and turn red. And there's also other lines that says maybe the roses were turned red from the blood of Adonis, or possibly Venus stepped on a thorn and turned the roses red. Either way, she's the reason why there are red roses. In this painting, white flowers can be seen flying towards the goddess, which looks similar to the artwork of the flower mentioned before, the ones from my illustration, that are being blown by the wind from Zephyrus while he is holding the nymph Chloris. Chloris happens to be the goddess of flowers, which is why the flowers are mainly coming from her direction. With this being the birth of Venus, one could say that this is her at her purest form, not yet having affairs with gods and mortals, and being given the flowers in their original form, which is white. The idea of purity can be backed by the action of Flora, the goddess of spring, running to clothe Venus as a way to retain her purity. One could also say that because she is a god, she is naturally pure, but this could be debated because most Greco-Roman gods and goddesses have human-like emotions. My third, kind of fourth paintings are the Annunciation and how white flowers are related to purity in the form of Mother Mary. In both of these paintings, the one on the left being by Botticelli and the one on the right being by Giordano, in both paintings, the angel Gabriel is presenting Mary with these white flowers. This is a scene from Luke chapter 1 verses 26 through 38, and although that these two works were made around 200 years apart, there are still similarities to point out, the main one being the use of the white flowers. In these two pieces, the angel Gabriel, who is the messenger of God, is the one who tells Mary that she is pregnant. He is holding white flowers and presenting them to her. These white flowers are known as Annunciation lilies and are a way of displaying Virgin's purity, since she will be giving birth to the Son of God without having the need of intercourse, thus retaining her chastity. Although there is no mention of these flowers in the original text, there must already be a preconceived notion of the white flowers being seen as a visual metaphor for purity and divine grace during this time in Italy. With that being said, all four of these works display white flowers, and they are all being displayed in a form purity, with Venus just being born, showing her purity, with the still life showing that there's some purity in love, and then lastly with the Annunciation paintings, showing one of the most purest people in written history, or fiction depending on your religion, of the Virgin Mary being pure. So yeah, that's my presentation. I have some sites that I used that I can show. Yeah, that's it. All done.